Nice. I mean, obviously, for my own selfish intention, are us diehards going to be rewarded?
So when you build a community, I think you want to be, giving more to users that have been more considerate and less short term. So that's
Yeah.
the idea. That's the idea. So we'll try to have like a nice airdrop for chapter 6 that will target more the people that have been participating.
Quick one, nothing here is financial advice. It's for entertainment and educational purposes only. Always do your own research or speak to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Enjoy the episode and like and subscribe.
Welcome back, everyone. Special guest, special guest today, Jordi Alexander. Doesn't really need an intro. He's been around for a long time. Looks younger than everyone else, but yeah, he's been there. He's been there, done that. One of the good guys in the space, in my opinion. From TradFi founder to crypto to wizard alchemist. I don't actually think Jordi's not done anything. He's been around the block. Just recently won a poker bracelet. As a previous poker pro, I can appreciate what that must have taken. Well done. And also the easiest, hardest event to win in Raz. I don't know how you did it. So yeah, Jordi, an absolute pleasure to have you on. And yeah, I've been dying to get you in. I know you've been super busy, and we managed to corner him on holiday. Appreciate it, Jordi. Welcome.
Yeah, it's good you put that. There's no holiday. This is going to be the most grinding time. When you're like isolated and you don't have anyone that you know and you don't have any nightclubs, there's nothing around, then you get some stuff done. But yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned Raz. It's an interesting game. I'm one of the few people in the world that love Raz. Raz is this kind of poker that, um, you try to make the worst hand instead of the best hand, and,
Yeah.
and it's not everyone's cup of tea. But I don't know. I love the little details and the little intric. It's a very technical game, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, and I jokingly said it's the easiest, hardest game in poker. Like it's super easy to understand, but in my opinion, it's the most difficult to master out of all of them. Some would argue Omaha is, but that's just because it taps into the ridiculous, degenerate side of everybody. Whereas Raz is very much the cerebral side in many ways. And I suppose a good place to start off is, kind of like your love and passion and something that you reflect on and what brought you to crypto. I think primarily is obviously the game theory side of things. And you recently spoke about, like the essence of game theory within crypto. And I think the biggest topic around that for me that like really resonated because I was in the trenches was obviously Ohm and Wonderland, and obviously a whole lot of lessons were learned. You were one of the few initially that said, "Listen, this isn't sustainable." No one wanted to believe you, and then obviously that's equipped you with, I would say, the artillery to go into this position that you've managed to kind of like craft for yourself at Mantle. And for anyone who doesn't know, Jordy's essentially facilitating a whole lot of, in my opinion, game theory approaches to the way that people can engage with Mantle as an L2. And I just want to explore that from a, from a maybe a philosophical, also from an intellectual perspective, but also from like kind of like what's meaningful for you. How did you go about like looking at, what didn't work to trying to figure out what potentially could work? And then was there kind of like fail safes that you could put in place in case things went south really fast?
The main thing is looking at the end game and trying to reverse from there. Like what is a way where there's an equilibrium, right? Like this is like the game theory concept. Where do things settle down instead of like what's the volatility in the path, but like what's actually a stable point. And most of the things that didn't work just didn't have a good stable point, and include Luna as one of those where you can treat something as money when it's not. And you can convince a lot of other people, but if you don't convince literally everybody, and at some point, like some people try to cash out and convert them to dollars or whatever your form of money is, And we can get into that if you want. I mean, I feel like dollars is another one where people just assume dollars is money, and that
Yes.
if you have a certain amount of dollars, then you can retire, or you can have access to buying things in a certain amount or a certain caliber that can change dramatically in certain situations that the world might end up in. So that's sort of what drives it, I think, understanding the end goal. The things that work. So the things that work is, attention is valuable, and if you can give out rewards for
Nothing here is
attention, it
financial
actually
advice.
is
It's for
a
entertainment and educational
sustainable
purposes only. Always
combination
do
there,
your own
because
research or
you're
speak to a financial
getting
advisor
value and
before
giving
making
back
any
value, and
investment
that's
decisions.
like the
Enjoy the
basis
episode and like and
of a
subscribe.
healthy kind of interaction, like a win-win interaction. So it's always been like, when I've been trying to design things or programs, it's always been around like, both sides should be giving something of value. And like things like TVL, like putting your ETH or Bitcoin, maybe that's valuable, maybe not, depends on if it's being used or what's being done with it. But there has to be a handshake agreement where both sides are bringing something to the table, and if they are, then fine. Like, there are opportunities for token incentives to create sustainable outcomes that are more rewarding than not having them. And I even take something like Lido, which gives you the staking yield and it gives you this 3%. But what if, as part of that, you're also getting some tokens? And why wouldn't you use that option, right? Like, it seems superior.
But don't you think that the biggest kind of like challenge, and maybe, I don't know, I interpret it as being kind of like a glitch in the matrix, is that this inflationary aspect that you're introducing into the system is actually the disadvantage, that eventually you're going to land up having a scenario like sushi, and it's not, I mean, I don't want to be dunking on sushi, but it's kind of like you've got a really good product that fulfills this function, but in time, the inflationary value of that reward becomes diluted, and then you essentially land up with what we have right now with sushi. So how do you design something that effectively eliminates that dynamic, but then still maintains that value throughout, essentially sustainability?
There's
I know
only
it's a simple question. I have drawn it out, but it's like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's really two ways. One is the the incentives are meant to bootstrap, so it's for like a 1 year period, or 6 months or 2 years, whatever it is. It's a period during which you have this inflation, but in essence, you're accomplishing a couple things. One is you're getting enough users and attention and like resources to be able to get to the next level, and
yeah,
we'll get to what that means. And two, you're also creating a base of potential like aligned equity holders, in a sense, that are your cheerleaders and also your evangelists, and help you with just spreading the word. So incentives is everything, and aligning incentives with the right communities, the right crowds, is very important for a project. Now, I totally agree. You can't just like inflate endlessly.
yeah,
So either the bootstrapping phase leads to you build an ecosystem that sort of doesn't need it, and we've seen examples of this in crypto. The most successful companies don't pay anything, and they've managed to bootstrap it. So like Binance is an example where that's still like a place where a lot of like natural activity happens, and they capture a lot of fees. Funnily enough, like DYDX V3, which is the old DYDX, is one where they cut the incentives completely at some point because they're trying to move them to the new version, but people still use it because they become accustomed to it. They get value out of using that platform instead of a different one. So even with no incentives, it's managed to bootstrap itself in a way that it wouldn't have if it didn't have that period. So there's a lot of examples like this that things do successfully create a short-term inflation, then they cut it, and you're already in a good spot.
So is it about creating that momentum within community? I mean, do you think that's kind of like the secret sauce of something like that? Because obviously with Binance and the rest of it, there's been very much that. I mean, we've obviously seen kind of like the backside of it now that CZ sitting in jail, and it's like, where is he? You know, but he was kind of the talisman behind that and the community behind that. Is that almost like the most important ingredient? Is that community aspect? Because you've spoken about this quite a bit, and or do you think it's a combination? Or I mean, is there more weight in community, or do you think it has to be kind of like, if there's 4 aspects, it's a 25% split? How do you view that approach?
So it really depends on the product. If you're talking about an exchange in which the product in essence is liquidity, liquidity begets liquidity, because that's the place where everyone's going to go to do this XYZ thing. So once you have that Schelling point, coordinating people to move to somewhere else, you have to do it all at the same time. And it's so hard to do because every day everyone just wakes up, and even if you get a few people, the rest are, it's hard to like herd the sheep. So there's a network effect there, and a lot of products rely on this network effect. I mean, social media is even worse. When it comes to social media, we've seen a lot of SocialFi, a lot of products, and there's Sparkcaster and Lens and like all these things. But people still, despite the ups and downs, just, you know, they go to Twitter. It's hard to get everybody to move, and if only a few people move, they're not getting the value of the network, right? So the network is very important. And with Mantle, like trying to bootstrap things is very much around building this initial network where there are a lot of people that are, you know, have their money there. They're used to, you know, finding their way on different apps and using the ecosystem, and it's worth, you know, spending upfront and front loading that.
Yeah, I mean, just jumping into Mantle, you know, just like the approach that you guys have taken is obviously that massive treasury that you know, people speak a lot about, but that's not the same as liquidity, right? I mean, that treasury isn't there as a source of liquidity as the treasury, or you guys kind of like using that as a collateral base in order to attract the liquidity? What's the strategy around essentially getting that dynamic going within Mantle?
Yeah, initially, like the treasury was being used a little bit conservatively. Like, okay, let's put a little bit here, a little bit there, but let's not really take any risks. The thing that we've found is a good use of it is bootstrapping assets even. So, you know, we put a lot into, initially it was like Ondo's USDY. We kind of help build that up. And Ethena was like another success where, you know, a lot of the treasury went into that. Eigenlayer is another one, or we've had, you know, hundreds of millions of the treasury into that. You know, these are continuing now. So obviously meth is a big part of what we're doing. And there's also Fire Bitcoin now, which is Bitcoin on Ethereum, that is kind of the new way to use Bitcoin in DeFi. So a lot of those uses of the treasury, I would say, are sort of like liquidity, but they're also sort of bootstrapping a new asset.
So do you think it's a case of building it and they'll come, or does it have to be kind of like, well, we make sure that we get the right dApps involved where, you know, you have a one-stop shop? I kind of see ecosystems and chains like malls, you know, like supermarkets. Like, can I go and do what I need to do and not have to really go anywhere, once again in inverted commas, you know? Like, is it really about building really cool apps and then putting them out there, getting the incentives going, and then kind of having an expectation that people are going to come? Or is it a lot more nuanced and kind of tricky to do? Because it seems like it's nuanced and tricky, but I'm just curious what you guys have found kind of like in the trenches.
It's definitely both. It's sort of like building a nightclub, and you have a new nightclub in town. You need to get people hyped about it, talking about it, and it has to be viewed as like a high status thing that, you know, this is cool. And I think, you know, Blast did that to a certain extent initially. You know, they've had some bumps in the road since then, but there's an element where you do want to, and I think Base kind of was successful with this as well, where it's a lot of like the brand association and brand awareness are kind of key to creating that virality. There's other aspects that you do want it to just be like a supermarket that, you know, you can can find your shampoos, and you can get your basics done. And if the wallets are not working and the gas is not like if it gets too difficult, you can't find parking, then you might not go back. So very focused on user experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I find really interesting is that kind of like brand association, and from my perspective, and it's like I haven't really seen the brand association between Bybit and Mantle. It's kind of like you either know or you don't know. Was that done on purpose? What's that dynamic? Or am I just kind of like living under a rock here and just like getting it all
No,
wrong?
it's definitely on purpose.
Okay.
And I think if you ask anyone in Mantle, like, oh, you're the Bybit chain, they're not gonna, like that or react positively, because it's really being run as its own completely separate and project, where Bybit is like one of the many partners that can sometimes provide strategic value, like creating a bridge for their users or listing stuff. So I wouldn't say that it's incorrect. It's actually definitely the case that they're quite separate brands, and even the teams are separate. Everything's separate.
Yeah. Okay. I had a question that I wrote down, and it was like, what would be kind of like your ultimate DeFi product? And then it was going to be followed by, what exactly was this whole strategy around Puff? And I'm just wondering, before you answer the first part of the question, is that part of this whole idea of what your perfect DeFi product looks like? Is it a precursor? Is it just walk us through firstly what your ideal DeFi product looks like?
I mean, there's so many categories of DeFi, right? Like, it's not the same if you want to trade or borrow or stake. There's I have a different answer for each category. I think for borrowing, you definitely the focus with MethLab and the stuff there is around avoiding liquidations. People can sleep better at night knowing that there's no chance, or some oracle or some price to move, and they lose their collateral, and that's super important. So for borrowing, I think the consistency of how it operates and avoiding flash crashes and stuff like that, very important. Obviously for trading, you really need to be able to get like low slippage, and UX is super key for that. For staking, which is kind of what we've done with Math and Puff, I think that one is definitely trying to go in the direction of what's a good product there. And I think ultimately for a product like that, like a staked ETH product, you want to have an entire ecosystem that accepts it as collateral. It makes it the main kind of pair in its ecosystem. And so that's where the whole beauty comes in, where you have the different apps, and they're all on the same chain, they're all kind of aligned and vetted. But then you also take the DeFi product, which is the staked ETH in this case, and everybody uses it. There's like a common community behind it and a common reason to hold it, and people are getting rewarded because there's value being created, like real value is being distributed out. So that's kind of close to a perfect product.
So just for the record, I haven't sold any of my Puff since day one, and I hope those people who have been loyal since day one get rewarded very handsomely. So I'm going to look to you, sir, at the end of chapter 6. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've got to go to methlab.xyz, and you got to check out what the guys at Mantle have built, and obviously what Jordi's been behind. I don't think anyone who's been there doesn't love it, whether it's the 2D or the 3D experience. And I think, like when we wonder like how we managed to actually do shit in 2020, like with pixelated screens, and I mean, we were basically like this close to having to type out / do this for me. I mean, the UI UX experience was always so bad in DeFi, but obviously that's changed. And I think in the last 2 years, with a lot of really positive building and perspective being brought over across from the last bull market. One of the things that I really enjoy about Mantle is that you guys have curated that user experience very carefully, from the bridge all the way through to even like what Trader Joe have got going with Mo and all the rest of it. And I wanted to just kind of get into the product itself and the shopping center that is, well, that's the way I kind of like the analogy I use. What is it that you guys would like to see from that user experience? Obviously the UI UX, that's the first part of the question. The second part is like, what are your favorite apps on Mantle at the moment, and what's kind of, is there an opportunity for you to talk about what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think the user experience for me actually starts with the wallet, and that's always something that
Yeah.
the systems have to decide. If they want to try to build their own wallet, if you're your own chain, usually you have to do it anyway. Like Sui, has to do their own thing. If you're on Ethereum, there's obviously a ton of teams building wallets, and the tech is improving. As Mantle, you're trying to tap into whatever the latest, greatest tech is. I think the wallet side probably still needs to improve on Ethereum. There's some good ones like Rabby. A lot of people like them. But
yeah, I'm a big Rabby fan. Yeah, I enjoy Rabby.
Yeah. I think Solana's done a pretty good job of having some decent wallets and making it quite intuitive, and also having a good mobile experience. So there's a lot to do there. I think the user experience is holistic, but at a minimum, you want cheap fees and things to move fast, and like that. Mantle's done a good job of that. We're the first using external DA. So external DA is kind of just a massive 10x on throughput and costs. The apps from the beginning, we've tried to have kind of different types of apps that are found on other chains to be a little bit different. So we have a lot of intent-based things like IntentX or Init Capital. So Init is using all these like liquidity hooks, and it's quite interesting. I just used it again yesterday, and we have a powder campaign going on now where you can start farming the governance token for meth, which is going to be called Cook. And there's around like 15 apps that give you powder. So I actually tried yesterday to go through and use as many of them as possible and put some meth in different places.
So I mean, obviously the conversation is wonderful in terms of like all these names, and when you guys started the campaign, there was obviously like this mystery around like what exactly is Puff going to do, and then there were conversations in many Discords and Telegram groups like, maybe it's going to be a governance token, maybe it's going to be this, maybe it's going to be that. So well done on that job in terms of kind of like creating this elusive kind of very big question mark around it. And then obviously in the last couple of weeks, you guys came out with essentially Puff will be in some form or another, it's going to basically become Cook, which is going to be the governance token. So what is that dynamic? Just walk us through that, because I know that I've gotten that last part wrong. So yeah, just correct me. So what's the dynamic there?
You could call it like how all these EtherFis, they have seasons, and season 1, 2, 3. You can consider Puff was like the season 0. It was like the first way to get involved and already in essence be getting access to the eventual governance token. It's not going to be a direct conversion. It'll be an optional conversion. So what we're designing is people will be able to choose whether to keep their Puff or burn it and get Cook. And I'm kind of curious to see how many people will choose one or the other. We're going to be releasing the details soon, but it looks like season 1 of the powder campaign is going to be 5% of the token supply, and Puff actually will also get 5% of the total supply, and people will kind of it'll be optional if they want to convert and be part of the people dividing up that 5%. There'll be an interesting game theory dynamic, because you'll be able to, if you want, wait and see how many other people are converting, so you kind of have a clearer sense of what ratio you're going to be getting, or you can commit early, and if you commit early, you'll get a little bit more. So you have to weigh the two, and I like these kind of games because they put people into a spot that doesn't really have a clear strategy.
Wow. So I didn't actually know that. So thanks for just blowing my head away, because I think it's like, like initially I would think that maybe it's a combination of the two, but then maybe that won't be such a great idea. But you probably find that the average will be a combination of the two, and it'll kind of like level out, I would assume, from a game theory perspective, because human beings want to get the best of both worlds, generally speaking. But I could be completely wrong. I mean, do you have any predictions as to what people are going to do?
I'm expecting some of the threaders and people to try to guess, okay, what is the governance token going to be worth? What's 5% of that? And then how many people are burning Puff to get that 5%? Is it half? Like, then you can kind of do some numbers and do some math and decide where you want to be. Puff will continue to exist after this conversion happens. So there will still be people there, and even if you don't have tokens, the one thing that we're going to be doing right now is making sure that the core community gets an NFT, like a PFP of Puff. We created like these really fun 3D like these 10K collections. We're going to have an 8888 collection, and they look really fun. I've been seeing hundreds of these that are being produced, and even if you convert your tokens, you'll still have this NFT, and the NFTs will actually be able to get targeted for airdrops and things like that. So the story goes on.
Nice. I mean, obviously, for my own selfish intention, are us diehards going to be rewarded? You guys did communicate, or you at liberty to tell us what those rewards look like? I mean, is that out there at the moment?
For Chapter 6 or for the NFTs?
Well, basically, at the end of Chapter 6, you guys said that whoever stayed loyal from the beginning will be rewarded. And I'm just curious as to what that reward is.
Well, what we've been generally trying to do is like use wallet reputation. So
Yes.
it's like something that I think is underexplored. But one of the cool things about blockchain is that there's an address, it's associated with a user, and everything's public. We're not using private blockchains.
Yes.
So in a public blockchain, you can see all the activity that's happened. Then you can, regardless of what somebody says or who, but not knowing who it is, or it doesn't matter, it's all there on the blockchain. You can see if they dumped, or if they bought more,
Yes.
what they do. So when you build a community, I think you want to be giving more to users that have been more considerate and less short term. So that's the idea. So we'll try to have like a nice airdrop for Chapter 6 that will target more the people that have been participating without
Yes.
like selling. Yes.
Yes, I like it. Okay, so I mean, I think the what I really like about what you guys did with Puff and the rest of it is that I don't really like do kind of like the quest type of things. Like, I like to go in, I like to do what I need to do, and then whether I'm staking and then kind of like move off. Whereas with Puff, it really did have me engaged, and it was like, I mean, from the Blockmates community side of things, like a lot of the guys got involved. Like we really did enjoy that process, and I think you guys really did hit it out the park. So well done. It was good fun. I mean, it's still ongoing, and it's great to hear that you planning on keeping this whole thing going and making it more interesting, and it'll be cool.
I appreciate it, and it's been an experiment, right? There's nothing really like it before. It's trying to pull together some of the things you can do with blockchain. Like we talked about reputation. We did a couple things like we actually did a prediction market. We did like a coordination game where people had to kind of try to make a bucket, the middle bucket. we've learned a lot. I think some of the learnings, we made a few mistakes, and I'm keen to reflect upon all the lessons, and maybe like run back a season 2. So it's not easy doing this stuff, and whenever you're dealing with thousands of people that all have a different opinion, and they're angry about this or they're happy about that, it's always there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again, and then we can kind of like revisit in the months to come. Just in terms of like the whole idea of governance, because the way that I'm currently perceiving, Mantle at the moment is essentially competing against someone like Arbitrum. It doesn't really matter whether you agree or not. I think it's kind of like there's a market, there's a product, and you want to deliver the product, and there's this idea of a governance token, and the I think the role that it plays, from voting to your status, because I think also owning a token within an ecosystem is also part of that status thing, because you have more whether you have less. And from your perspective, in terms of like reflecting around kind of like Arbitrum's experience, what do you think they did right, and what do you think that they did wrong in terms of this process that they did around their governance token? And if you don't think they did anything wrong, that's cool as well. But what did you think they did right?
I mean, there's some things that are not right or wrong, but they're like they matter a lot. Like it's a
Good
VC
answer.
project. So VC
Yeah.
projects, they have to deal with unlocks. They have to
Yeah.
deal with supply coming online, and I think the one thing that I'll make a little rant about is just tokenomics is still so misunderstood by even like whales in the space. And what makes good or bad tokenomics, it used to be that low float at the beginning and just constrict the supply and make the price go up. But then you can only delay it for so long. At some point, like with Arbitrum, you can delay it, and you can even like redelay it, like DYDX. I think at some point they extended it by another year.
They extended. That's right. They passed governance and they extended it. Yeah.
Yeah, but like at some point it's gonna unlock, and like, what then? I mean, are we just gonna absorb it easily? It's never easy to absorb unless it's like a huge bull market.
Yeah.
So with Arbitrum, they did nothing wrong. I mean, they were kind of successful at the beginning. They've done a great job on getting the most activity and being like the default sort of TVL. And that's because I think like on the tech side, they were initially more solid than OP or like the early alternatives. They've done a lot wrong since, I would say. They've dropped the ball in like mindshare. Nobody like really talks about them anymore. They haven't done a lot of exciting things. The unlocks have come to roost, and I think they did a great job with the STIP incentives, where they put all the apps to make an application, and it created a lot of buzz because people are voting and who's going to get what. But on the downside, it made it very political, and some of the people felt like if you weren't one of the early kids like GMX, then you weren't being treated fairly. So it's two-sided. I think there are learnings there. Yeah, I would give them like a B.
Yeah. I think you're being very generous. But one thing that they did get right, I think, in the beginning, and it's what I wanted to speak to in terms of Mantle, is that obviously that community side of things, they were essentially the first alt2 that managed to capture the imagination beyond just Ethereum. I think Metis tried to do that. I think they still are. But I think, Arbitrum really nailed it. They like had those big protocols coming in early, and you could go there and you could basically trade without those gas fees during that bull market that we saw $300-400 transaction costs. And I think that was where it all started for them. And then they managed to pick up all that TVL and they had the momentum. And then I think personally where I think they dropped the ball is that political game that played out. Maybe it's because we weren't one of the cool kids quoting a whole lot of money to do content for them. But that's for another day. And I think yeah, just coming back to kind of like that community aspect. I mean, I know that you totally get the degen aspect of, you know, like this market and space, and more importantly how community functions. um how do you guys plan on kind of like extending that mind share, you know, like that working example that was Arbitrum? Do you guys have any tricks that you can draw on, that you can use for your own arsenal to actually bring more people in? Because I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is that Mantle's fast, it's cheap, you've just rattled off early on a shitload of really good apps, you know, and it's like now all you need is just that volume and those people. And how do you plan on doing that? Obviously incentives, I would imagine, is one of those things which you're doing with Puff and the rest of it,
Yeah, and I
but
think
is there like a big drive?
the drive is to be asset centric. So like if you're gonna hold ETH, what's the best option you have out of all the ways to hold ETH? And there's 50 of them. We
Yeah.
want that to be the best option in every way. So it gives you the highest yield, gives you extra rewards. You're getting farming eigenlayer. You're able to use it in the ecosystem because it's actually, you know, all the apps part of the ecosystem, they want to integrate it. That's why they're there. So you can use it to do everything you want to do, but you can't say the same for, you know, um, I don't want to let's just say like Rocket Pool ETH. You know,
Yes.
there's more RETH out there, but there's none of this like activity and ecosystem and like fun and hype. So and also like lower rewards, of course, for sure, if you compare. So um, yeah, the idea is like be asset centric. If you want to hold Bitcoin, you can hold BTC, or you can, you know, there's a new thing that's being worked on. This is quite new, so people will see it over time. But like this FPTC, which is hopefully a better version of you know, wrapped Bitcoin.
Yes.
Um, if you want to hold stables, we have a lot of options. You know, obviously we have all the liquidity for like USDY and Ethena and Pendle, all this stuff, and there's more coming. So being asset centric, because I think number one, product market fit is like people want to hold coins. They want to invest. They want to have things to spend, and providing the best like assets and environment for those assets is that's the goal.
Cool. I mean, the whole idea that you guys also brought to the table, which I really enjoy, is kind of like this the double yield aspect to that. Is that's still currently active? No.
Oh, that
So
was
that,
bootstrapping for the first. I mean, that was expensive.
yeah, I'm sure it was.
It was we dove into the pockets for that one. We did give double yield for, I think it was like 4 months or something,
Okay.
and that helped kind of, you know, get everyone's attention. But we still have, obviously, with eigenlayer points plus the cook plus everything else, I think it's still the highest yield by far on any option with ETH. And then on the governance side, the MNT token, you know, one of the things I pushed for last year, which we managed to successfully push. I don't know if you've seen it, but we have a reward station where it's the airdrop model, or the farming model, where you can just stake your MNT. And I have to say, I did take a little bit of inspiration from a combination of one BNB, like the launch
Yes.
pools. You just have a this extra dividend for being part of that ecosystem. So I thought that doing that on chain instead of in a centralized way is even cooler. So if you go
Okay.
now to the reward station, you can lock up your MNT, and then you start farming Cook and all these other ecosystem tokens.
Okay. So I mean, I know that you've spoken quite positively about airdrops as part of an incentive. Um, I think we've seen quite a lot of airdrops that didn't really work out. Um, what do you think at the very essence of an airdrop, well, needs to be at the essence of an airdrop for it to ultimately work? Is it kind of like one or two things that you've managed to single out from a game theory perspective, or is it kind of like this whole spreadsheet when you look at it, like from a holistic perspective?
I mean, I think 90% of the way there gets you if you just avoid, you know, sibblers and people that are trying to sort of game it.
Yeah.
It's become a big business for years now to, you know, spin up 10,000 wallets and try to just get 10,000 airdrops and then sell them. Why wouldn't it be big business? Like each one is
Yeah.
worth $1 to $10,000. Do
Yeah.
this
Proper
10,000
money.
times. Yeah. So we've seen Layer 0 do some interesting stuff there, really trying to target and figure out who's who. With Reward Station, thankfully, like it's like the proof of work, so to speak, is the fact that you own the token, and if you do it linear, then dividing into 1,000 wallets doesn't really matter. So as you see with Puff and MNT, generally, like, I'm a fan of linear distribution. So if someone just hacks a script together and divides it up over many wallets, they're not going to benefit at all. They're just going to pay more gas. So that's I think the most important.
Okay, so I mean, is Mantle looking at doing some kind of airdrops in the future? Is that kind of like on your menu? No.
There's no direct MNT airdrop. So
yeah,
the good and bad of MNT as an asset is that there's no unlocks, there's no VC unlocks, there's no airdrops. The supply is all out. It's been out for a while. That's why it's been the most performant L2 if you look at all of them, and a lot of it is just in the treasury as well, which is mainly used for very targeted incentive programs over time. So no like just crazy airdrops for everybody for no reason.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely the right way to approach it in light of all the lessons we've learned. I mean, Kobe even said that he believes that the zero airdrop was going to be the last one. It's kind of like, we figured out how this game works. And I mean, obviously Brian was very engaging. Brian Pellegrino was very engaging in terms of like, okay, we've managed to nail these Sibblers. And it was fascinating I mean, obviously I never got a chance to speak to him. But it just seemed like they really were nose to the ground, like really putting a stop to a lot of that stuff. But I'm sure even a lot went through. But from a price point of view, you can see that they probably got most of them because we haven't seen like a huge amount of sell pressure. And let's see. I mean, let's see if there are any significant airdrops and what happens.
Doing an airdrop or campaign with like a token at the end, and you have to figure out how to give it. People don't realize like how much work it is, and you can compare it to, like, you can see like Eigenlayer or Layer 0 or these teams, the amount of work that they spend on just giving out the tokens versus building the actual like tech of the protocol. Sometimes it just completely takes away their focus for like weeks and weeks. And Mike from EtherFi told me something like this as well. I mean, it ends up becoming like more work than the actual protocol to do these things properly.
I mean, with Eigenlayer now, I mean, obviously there's been a huge focus, and especially with Pendle as well, where there's been this kind of like this points, the demand for farming points and the rest of it, and some people would argue that sure, Pendle's got a great product. They managed to kind of like shortcut this whole yield process, and there's no question their product is kick ass. But a lot of people would argue that one of the reasons why they did so well, especially kind of like in the first part of this bull market, is because people were farming points. Do you necessarily agree with that? And I mean, do they need to kind of like potentially like add more products into their arsenal, or do you think it's business as usual for them?
I mean, they had a product before all the point stuff, which was, anything that you can divide the yield-bearing asset into like its base and its yield, and provide value to people by breaking it up, and they can sell one or whatever. This is the PTYT model. So the points meta just sort of gave them like a very explosive like use case. I agree it's sort of temporary, but the underlying thing is basic finance. I mean, being able to break things down into tranches and sell the ones, or value them differently depending on people's preferences and speculation, is always going to be useful. And now that they've shown that they can handle billions of TVL and be safe and do it properly, I think the future is still bright for them. Even if the points meta goes away and we have more TradFi type of things going on.
Yeah. Real world assets and kind of that narrative and that investment class, if you can call it that. What are your thoughts around that? And also Mantle's role in that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the treasury, so Mantle can help, bootstrap these things. We've had Ondo, now we have Agora, which is another partner looking to make a RWA treasury stablecoin. I think it's harder than people think to just replace USDC and USDT with the same product that gives you yield. Like, it makes sense, of course. I just want to get 5% on top of all the USDT I'm holding, right? Why not? You kind of run into these like liquidity fragmentation, and also just like if you're getting yield, suddenly you have to figure out, like, are you rebasing the token? Are you giving more of the token? Like, how is it being distributed? And there's a lot of different models, and I would say like the tech is not fully there when it comes to integrating a lot of DeFi with rebasing tokens. So it's an ongoing process. I think we all wanted to get there. And maybe in a bear market is when people will focus on that extra 5%, and not right now. So Mantle will continue to play a role, but we know what bull market and bear market products are, and sometimes they're different.
In terms of the future of Mantle, like if you kind of like had to paint a picture, what does that look like? I mean, I know it's kind of like an obvious question, and probably the answer might be obvious, but I'm kind of hoping that there's other sides to this.
Look, Mantle has always been pragmatic and willing to take risks from a tech side. I would say it's not a tech product. It's a user product. We really want to have the end user in mind. Very different than most of these like ZK Sync and Polygon, at least L2. So, we'll keep focusing on the users and what is the way that they want to interact with it, rather than the underlying tech. And then we'll keep choosing partners on the tech side, whether it's OP or Eigenlayer or like other players that are better emerging. Who knows? So keeping a very pragmatic approach on the tech side, and the other thing I mentioned is just the asset focus, trying to really create good assets and bootstrap those is the future.
So, I mean, just kind of closing it out. I mean, there's been a lot said about the success of ecosystems. At the end of the day, come down to that ecosystem being or having the ability to make its users a whole lot of money. How do you see Mantle doing that for its users in the long term, obviously?
I mean, short term, long term, I think giving them the best yields possible. Like we said, on every category, if they want to hold ETH or dollars or what they want to hold, is part of it. Those who decide to hold the MNT are also getting, quite a good amount of airdrops. I mean, you had like a large amount of Ethena shards early on, and now with Cook, like these are pretty chunky rewards. I think on like an APY basis, it's quite high. So that's how you do it. And I think Puff, hopefully with the NFTs and with all the rewards, it's obviously hopefully still a positive outcome.
Yeah, I saw that little smile at the end. So I'm hoping that it does work out that way. So last question from me, obviously on a personal level. How the hell, Jordi, do you manage to do everything that you manage to do? Like, your plate is full, and you still, you found the time. I mean, we did battle to find some time to get together. I mean, you're in London, you're in the States, but we managed to get it together. But you're on a podcast. You've got a lot going on. How do you actually how do you do it? I mean, what is kind of like your secret to fitting it all in?
I got so burnt out by the end of May that I took this poker time. I was still working during the poker weeks, but I took a little bit of time. And now that I reflect back, I'm not sure like I can do it again. Like the 12 months before that was so intense. So I think I took on a lot. I love learning. I love being creative, and I love challenge. And even when it comes to things that I've never done before, like venture investing was something I hadn't really done up until a few years ago, and now we're doing a ton of big deals all over the place, and I'm on the investment committee on the Mantle side as well, so I'm quite deep into that space. It's really fascinating to dive into these different. It's like a different poker variance, you stud in Omaha. So I have so much curiosity. I don't get bored, and maybe that's one of the secrets. I just want to keep digging in and learning, and I have to be very careful with my time. I think that's probably like the thing I've been most strategic about. Like every hour matters, and we don't think about it, but each day only has 10 productive hours. You can't really squeeze more out of them when you put in, everything else that you need to do. So yeah, if people are asking for, hours of your time, you have to be quite careful with keeping enough. Going forward, I want to keep at least a little bit of time for creativity, because if you're always just executing, you miss like the extra spice. And I think the spice is the fun part.
Yeah, I try and do like one major trip a year, whether it's fly fishing or surfing or just getting away, like truly throwing this thing away. This is probably the worst thing in the world. And like
people,
truly being able, yeah,
they can even just do like under 20-minute commute to work, just reflect and just like let your mind wander. When it wanders, it usually like finds things that are in the background that you want to look at.
So you haven't stopped playing poker completely. I mean, do you still kind of like play? Like
I don't play
no.
a year. I have zero time, so I only play around June every year. But somehow it's like riding a bike. You get off and then you get on. You still remember how to do it.
So do you specifically go to the World Series and take time out and just do? So how many events do you normally compete in?
I normally play about eight a year.
Yeah. All right.
And being quite lucky with final tables, I've been making like about 2 final tables a year out of those 8, which is quite
that's insane
ratio.
Yeah,
but it was finally close one.
Yeah, so well done for that. I mean, that's like, for anyone who doesn't know, it's probably like, it really is a perfect storm. Like, you've got to get so much go your way, and it's a big thing. And that the tweet that you sent out was awesome. Like, it was so bang on, and so obviously very personal, and very like this has been a mission for me, like this hasn't been an easy road. And yeah, so thanks for sharing that with everyone. I really did have an impact on me, and it was like fucking well done, man.
All right, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on for next time. See ya.